So hello guys, so welcome to Vishnu IAS. This is Rasool, Faculty of History. So in this session, we'll make efforts to understand what are the areas to be concentrated while you're preparing for Group 1 services. So as you know, in Group 1 services, we have prelims at the same time mains. So as far as history is concerned, one of the important subjects in prelims, history, and even in mains, you can't imagine the mains papers without history. So let us understand how history to be studied, what are the areas to be concentrated. So those who are preparing for competitive exams, they are quite aware of that. We have totally 3 components in history: ancient, medieval and modern. So ancient Indian history, medieval Indian history and modern Indian history. So in ancient Indian history, we have topics right from Indus Valley civilization to mid 8th century AD. Right from Indus Valley civilization to mid 8th century AD. So as far as medieval is concerned, from mid 8th century AD to 18th century AD. Mid 8th century AD to 18th century AD. When it comes to modern Indian history, from 18th century AD to mid 20th century AD, that is up to 1947. So these are the areas to be concentrated. So while you're preparing for competitive exams, that is ancient, medieval and modern. Now with this background, as far as ancient history is concerned, what are the topics to be concentrated? The most important topics, you call them. We have Indus Valley civilization. So under Indus Valley civilization, you're supposed to concentrate on town planning. So what were the features based on which the town planning got constructed, and what were the the significant aspects of town planning? Followed by socio-economic and religious conditions of Indus Valley civilization. Another important area, how society was, what kind of position women were given, and what were the economic institutions, how agriculture was, what kind of, what were the methods through which Indus people cultivated crops, did they follow irrigation system, if not, why? Followed by industries, what kind of industries Indus people had, and trade and commerce. In trade and commerce, we have 2 components, that is internal trade. In trade and commerce, we have 2 components, internal trade and external trade. So what was the mode of transaction in internal trade? The mode of transportation in internal trade apply the same towards external trade. What is the mode of transaction? What is the mode of transportation? With which contemporary civilizations Indus people maintained commercial relations with? So Indus people, Indus Valley civilization, otherwise called as Harappan civilization. Harappans maintained commercial relations with contemporary civilizations. So these are the areas to be concentrated. So it's all about Indus Valley civilization. As far as Vedic civilization is concerned, Vedic civilization, Vedic literature to be concentrated, Vedic literature. That is the second topic of ancient Indian history. After Indus Valley civilization, we have Vedic civilization. When we understand the summary of Vedic civilization, what are the areas to be concentrated? To begin with Vedic literature, that is we have Shruti literature, followed by Smriti literature. What are the components in Shruti? That is we have Vedas, Aranyakas, Brahmanas, Upanishads. When it comes to Smriti literature, we have 4 components in Smriti literature. We have Vedangas, Upavedas, Puranas and Itihasas. So once you're done with Vedic literature, now we have 2 elements, that is early Vedic period and later Vedic period. That is early Vedic society. Early Vedic society. How early Vedic society was, and what were the early Vedic social institutions. With this background, you have to study what kind of changes which took place in later Vedic society. In early Vedic society, you come across class, In later Vedic society, you come across caste. You must be good at class-based societies and caste-based societies. And what kind of the position women were given in early Vedic society, and how this particular position underwent changes in later Vedic society. So when you study these the elements, early Vedic society, later Vedic society, early Vedic economy and later Vedic economy, early Vedic religion and later Vedic religion. So with this background, with analysis, let me tell you, you'll be able to understand concepts. So maintain conceptual clarity. So study in this way. It doesn't take much time in remembering changes, right? You have to concentrate on changes, because when you go through previous year questions and question papers, yes, you do come across questions on this area, right? It's all about Vedic civilization. Another important topic, that is Jainism, followed by Buddhism and other philosophies. It was in 6th century BC in ancient India we found many new philosophies, and few philosophies have got the status called religions. One among them was Jainism. One among them was Buddhism. One among them was Ajivika religion, Charvaka. So while you are reading Jainism, Buddhism and other the religions, you have to concentrate on philosophers, the respective philosophers. When you are reading Jainism, so be good at Tirthankars. Who are Tirthankars? In which circumstances Tirthankars came up with the respective philosophies. One among them was, we have Rishabhnath, Parshvanath, Vardhaman Mahavir, followed by their principles. Take an example of Jainism, 23rd Tirthankar, he came up with certain principles. And it was 24th Tirthankar was associated with Jainism. He added one more principle, that is 5 principles, Pancha Vratas we call them, or Pancha Sutras we call them. After the same towards Buddhism, Gautama Buddha, his principles, Chatvani Arya Satyas, followed by Ashtanga Marga. And apply the same strategy for other philosophers. And finally, make efforts to understand the differences between Jainism and Buddhism. At the same time, what are the similarities between Jainism and Buddhism? So once you're done with Jainism and Buddhism, we have another important topic, that is Mahajanapadas. It was in later Vedic period we found Janapadas. There were 16 Janapadas. Out of 16 Janapadas, one Mahajanapada called Magadha emerged as an empire. So concentrate, what are the factors which helped Magadhan kingdom or Magadhan Mahajanapada to emerge as Samrajya. So factors for the rise of Magadhan empire we got. So concentrate, what were the dynasties which ruled over Magadhan empire? So we have Haryankas, right from Haryankas to Kanvas. Another important topic, that is Mauryans. A brief political history. We have Chandragupta Maurya, Bindusara and Mauryan Ashoka. Chandragupta Maurya, Bindusara, Mauryan Ashoka. Concentrate on Mauryan Ashoka. It was after War of Kalinga, which took place in the year 261 BC. Mauryan Ashoka got converted to Buddhism. What kind of contributions made by Mauryan Ashoka towards Buddhism? So in order to bring an amicable, what we call relations among his people, he came up with Dhamma, Ashoka's Dhamma we call it. Concentrate on Ashoka's Dhamma. And one of the patent questions for mains was Dhamma relevant to present society? Was Dhamma of Ashoka relevant to present society? Obviously the answer is yes, it is relevant. If so, how it is relevant? Start understanding the concept. So once you're done with political history, go for administration, very brief administration. That is, we have civil administration, followed by military administration, revenue administration, and finally judiciary. Under civil administration, we have central government, followed by provincial government, district government, and finally villages. When it comes to revenue administration, concentrate what were the sources of incomes and the sources of expenditure. Military administration, we found Chaturanga Balar, fourfold forces. Even Kautilya's Arthashastra also mentioned a kingdom shall possess 4 wings, that is Kalbala, Ashvika Dala, Gajabala and Rathabala. Now with this, your military administration gets completed, followed by judicial administration. What kind of judicial institutions Mauryans had, and how the penal code was the Mauryan penal code was harsh towards culprit. If so, what was the fate of the crime rate? So these are the areas to be concentrated. And finally, we have general conditions, that is Mauryan society, Mauryan economy and Mauryan culture. So what kind of cultural contributions made by Mauryans? Yes, Mauryans dug up rock-cut caves for monks. Especially the gentleman, Mauryan Ashoka, being a Buddhist, he, got involved in construction of monuments, Buddhist monuments. We have stupas, we have viharas, we have chaityas. Viharas otherwise called as aramas. So Buddhist constructions. Right? So these are the areas to be concentrated as far as Mauryans are concerned. When it comes to post-Mauryan age, so besides political history of post-Mauryan age, that is northwestern India, we have foreigners. North India, we have local rulers. Eastern India, Deccan and South India, we have local rulers. So under post-Mauryan age, concentrate how the Indian subcontinent, the political map of Indian subcontinent divided into small kingdoms, and how the power of 500 years was shared between the foreigners and native rulers. And finally, what kind of contributions made by post-Mauryan rulers to Indian society, that is Gandhara, followed by Mathura and Amaravati. So Gandhara school of art, Mathura school of art, Amaravati school of art. So these are the areas to be concentrated. When it comes to Guptans, yes, you shall concentrate on Guptans, same elements of political history, followed by general conditions, that is general conditions, we have society, economy and culture. As far as society is concerned, we have new social institutions cropped up in Mauryan, in Guptan society. So these areas to be concentrated. And finally, the temple architecture. In India, we found three styles in temple architecture, that is Nagara style, Vesara style and Dravidian style. Nagara style in North India, Vesara style in Deccan and Dravidian style in South India. So temple architecture to be concentrated as far as Guptan age is concerned. So now the online students asks, do we read all components of history? The answer is yes. As I was telling, we have 3 components in history. We have 3 components in history, that is ancient, medieval and modern. Right? So ancient Indian history from earliest to mid 8th century AD, from Indus Valley civilization to 8th century AD. When it comes to medieval Indian history, from mid 8th century AD to 18th century. Modern Indian history, 18th century to mid 20th century. Yes, we shall read all components. Right? So be good at syllabus. Right? So when you go through syllabus of Group 1 services, be it the prelims and mains, be good at syllabus. If you are thorough with syllabus, so whatever the questions which may cropped up in the form of, in the form of concepts or in the form of questions, you can easily answer. As far as medieval Indian history is concerned, that is, as I was telling, from 8th century to 18th century, is we have many topics. One among them was early medieval age, this particular area to be concentrated, followed by Delhi Sultanate, followed by Mughal Sultanate, and finally we have Marathas. So when we go through previous question papers, what were the areas to be concentrated on these aspects? Once again, socio-economic and cultural aspects. especially in early medieval age. Obviously, with the brief background of political history, how Rajput society was, what kind of the economic institutions cropped up in early medieval age, and what kind of cultural contributions made by early medieval rulers to Indian culture, especially Rajputs, followed by Deccan rulers. As far as Deccan is concerned, in early medieval age, Deccan is concerned, it was ruled by Rashtrakutas and it was also ruled by Kalyani Chalukyans. So be it Rashtrakutas and Kalyani Chalukyans, they rendered enormous services to culture. When I say culture, we have literature, followed by religion, followed by art forms, and finally architecture. Apply the same towards South India, Cholas. And Cholas rendered enormous services to temple architecture. So it's all about early medieval age. As far as Delhi Sultanate is concerned, concentrate on composite culture. So history taught us from 13th century onwards, Indian subcontinent experienced composite culture. So what is this composite culture? That is mixture of various cultures. In terms of society, composite element, in terms of economy, composite element, and even in terms of culture, composite elements. So composite to be concentrated. And finally, what kind of construction activities, that is so mixed activities. Otherwise, even in terms of constructions, we found composite, that is Indo-Islamic style, otherwise called as Indo-Persian style of architecture. So these are the areas to be concentrated. After the same towards Mughals and Marathas. It's all about medieval Indian history. As far as modern Indian history is concerned, from 18th century to mid 20th century. So when we understand what are the areas to be concentrated under modern Indian history, concentrate on various companies. So many companies have come to India and established the respective settlements on western coast and on eastern coast. Out of 5 European companies, one European company called English East India Company emerged as supreme economically. So with this economic supremacy, the second topic, how English East India Company conquered for about 60% of Indian subcontinent, what they prefer to call it as British India. So British conquest of India, we call it, that is 60%. English East India Company used so many what we call strategies. One among them was wars, battles, subsidiary alliance, doctrine of lapse and all. So having conquered 60% of Indian subcontinent, English East India Company introduced so many policies. So these policies, that is administrative policies, administrative reforms. So concentrate, what is this the regulating acts and all, right? We have 1770, the Regulating Act, 1784, Pitt's India, 1813, 1833, 1858, it went on, please. Followed by revenue. We found 3 land tenure systems, that is Raitwari, Zamindari and Mahalwari. Followed by educational reforms, right? What kind of educational institutions established by English East India Company? How Christian missionaries were responsible for spreading English education in India. What were the intentions through which English East India Company established educational institutions? When did English make as an official language? These are the areas to be concentrated as far as educational reforms are concerned. When it comes to social reforms, so what is the response of English East India Company or English by looking at Indian social customs, that is caste system, followed by the position of women and all. So how did English officers act? So English officers opposed maximum inhuman positions which are associated with women, which are associated with Dalits or low caste people. They were opposed and they enacted many reforms. They enacted so many acts. Maybe Satya Abolition Act of 1829, it went on. We have so many acts and all. It's all about policies. Now the question is, what is the response of English? What is the response of Indians when English East India Company introduced policies? Very simple. These policies, they were associated with exploited in nature. They were associated with racially segregated in nature. They were associated with extremely discriminative in nature. That is the reason different sections of Indian society organized revolts. So another important topic, revolts and movements. మనం తెలుగులో తిరుగుబాట్లు మరియు ఉద్యమాలు ఉంటాం, revolts and movements. We have a list of revolts. Concentrate on list of revolts. And another important topic, that is socio-religious reformation movements. సామాజిక మత సంస్కరణోద్యమాలు, సామాజిక మత సంస్కరణోద్యమాలు, reformation movements we call. So under socio-religious reformation movements, concentrate on Hindu reformation movements, followed by Islamic reformation movements, followed by Sikh reformation movements and Parsi reformation movements, because maximum questions were associated with, in modern India, socio-religious reformation movements. So especially while you're preparing for mains event with the background of Indian history, socio-religious reformation movements, concentrate what were the developments which took place in Andhra region. Because the same topic which we have in Andhra history, socio-religious reformation movements in Andhra. For example, you are reading here Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Swami Vivekananda, Swami Dayananda Saraswati and others. Now in Andhra, so regional level, you have to read Kandukuri, Vireshalingam, Raghupati, Venkatatamnaidu, Deshiraju, Pedabape. We have at least half a dozen important social reformers. So the same background. So I would advise those who are preparing for the group 1 services, read mains followed by prelims. And with the background of Indian history, concentrate on Andhra history. Say for example, you're reading Indian history, that is 1857 revolt. As part of Indian history, we have causes, followed by course, followed by consequences. Now with this background, read what are the important events which are associated with 1857 revolt in Andhra region. Same events, same background. The only thing is facts would be changed. Apply the same towards socio-religious reformation movements. Apply the same towards national movement. As far as national movement is concerned, we have 3 phases in national movement, that is moderate phase, extremist phase and Gandhian phase. The span of national movement 1885 to 1947, moderate phase 1885 to 1905, extremist phase 1905 to 1920 and Gandhian phase 1920 to 1947. So what kind of movements organized by extremist leaders, that is Lal, Bal and Pal? We found 2 movements, that is Vande Mataram movement and Home Rule movement. So while you're reading Vande Mataram movement, Home Rule movement at national level, with this background, come to regional level. It would become easy. You need not to put efforts once again to read. Apply the same towards, when it comes to Gandhian phase, we have 3 movements, that is non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience movement and Quit India movement. So while you're reading non-cooperation movement on national level, so read non-cooperation movement at national level, what were the factors for the outbreak of non-cooperation movement, what are the programs of non-cooperation movement, what are the important leaders who are associated with non-cooperation movement, and how non-cooperation movement had spread to other parts of British India. With this background, come to Andhra region. After the same towards civil disobedience movement, followed by Quit India movement. One strong solid preparation, Indian history, at the same time AP history would become easy. So follow these instructions. We'll meet in the next session. Thank you.